much for joining us on Parliament Television. Live debates will be coming your way at 14:30 hours, and on live commentaries, my name is Pauline Monga.
Good afternoon, and my name is Matimba Mkua, and we are joined by our sign language interpreters, Jason Manda and Chola Kauma. We go straight into looking at business that was considered on the floor of the House yesterday, Tuesday, 5th December 2023.
Yes, there was an announcement by the Honorable Madam First Deputy Speaker in which she informed the House that she had received communication to the effect that in the absence of her Honor, the Vice President, the Minister of Finance and National Planning, Honorable Dr. Stumbeko Msokotwani, MP, had been appointed to act as leader of government business in the House from Tuesday, 5th December until further notice.
In the second announcement, Madam First Deputy Speaker informed the House that she had received communication to the effect that in the absence of the government chief, Mr. Jamba Majila, Member of Parliament for Mwembeshi, had been appointed acting government chief whip.
And there were three matters of urgent public importance that were considered. There were, the first one was by Mr. Kapyanga, a Member of Parliament from Mpika Central, and the second one was from Mr. Menyani Zulu, and from Member of Parliament for Nyimba, and Mr. J. Chivuye, Member of Parliament for Serenje. And on one of the three was admissible, and he posed a question on whether the government would provide food relief to families whose relatives were buried alive at Seseli mines in Chingola while awaiting retrieval of the bodies. And of course, Madam First Deputy Speaker advised Her Honor the Vice President to issue a ministerial statement on Friday, 8th December 2023.
After those matters of urgent public importance, the Minister of Agriculture made a statement on issues surrounding the distribution of farming inputs under the Farmer Input Support Program and the e-voucher program countrywide for the 2023-2024 farming season, following a directive by Madam First Deputy Speaker on the urgent question raised by Mr. Christopher Chivuye, Member of Parliament for Mukushi North, on Wednesday, 29th November 2023. The Minister briefed the House on the status of fertilizer and seeds distribution and measures the government was taking to address challenges arising from the exercise.
Thereafter, the House considered questions for oral answer number 156 and 157, understanding order 76. And then thereafter, the House also considered a report that was moved by Pambashe, Member of Parliament, and that this House do adopt the report of the Committee on Youth, Sport and Child Matters on the report of the Auditor General on government measures that to reduce incidences of child labor in Zambia for the period 2018-2022 for the third session of the 13th National Assembly, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 28th November 2023, and this was seconded by Solwezi East Member of Parliament, Mr. Alex Katakwe.
After that, the House considered the Defense Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2023, which came at committee stage, and so this bill was reported without amendments, and it is expected to be read the third time today. The House also considered the Marriage Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 13 of 2023, which was read the third time, and this bill passed.
And thereafter, the House resolved into Committee of Supply to consider estimates of revenue and expenditure, including capital and constitutional statutory expenditure. And the heads that were considered were the 45 Ministry of Community Development and Social Services, and a total amount of 5,581,480,127 kwacha was agreed to be part of the estimates.
Head 68, which is the Ministry of Tourism, the chairperson deferred consideration of Head 68 to a later date. After that, the House did consider Head 89, Ministry of Agriculture, and at the time business was being interrupted yesterday. Under consideration was this head, which is Head 89, Ministry of Agriculture, and on the floor of the House was Chasefu, Member of Parliament, Mr. Mishek Nyambose. And it being 1840 hours, the chairperson interrupted the proceedings and the committee work stood adjourned. And so, Madam First Deputy Speaker adjourned the House at 1842 hours. And so this is the business that was considered on the floor of the House yesterday, Tuesday, 5th December 2023. Just now we go straight into looking at business that is expected to be considered on the floor of the House today.
Yes, Matimba, today business of the House on the order paper consists one question for oral answer understanding order 76. We also have one question for oral answer understanding order 74, one private member's motion, and one committee report to be considered on the floor of the House.
We also expect the Vice President to suspend standing orders 25, 27 and 115 of the National Assembly of Zambia Standing Orders 2021 to enable the House to sit at 09 hours until business on the order paper for each day is completed from Thursday 7th December to Wednesday 13th December 2023, and also to consider more than one stage of a bill at a single sitting.
Yes, and some of the questions to be considered, as I mentioned earlier, there are two. The question to be considered, understanding Order 76, it comes from Lubansenshi, Member of Parliament, and is posing a question to the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development. The first part of the question, he wants to know whether government is aware that the World Development Committee members in Lubansenshi and other constituencies are charging applicants of the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, to process their applications. And B, in the B part of the question, he wants to know what urgent measures are being taken to ensure committees' adherence to CDF guidelines. And the C part of the question, he wants to know whether measures at B are being implemented.
And so there you have it on your screen is Madam Speaker's procession. Madam First Deputy Speaker's procession making its way to the chamber. Keep watching Parliament Television. Good afternoon.
Honorable members of Parliament, Madam Speaker.
Tendency of Zambia, proud and free, land of wealth and joy in unity, victors in the struggle for the right. We want freedom's fight, oh, one, strong and free. Africa is our own motherland, fashioned with and blessed by those good men. Let us, all our people, join as one, brothers under the sun. Oh, one, strong and free. One land and one nation is our cry. Dignity and peace in Zambia's sky, like a noble eagle in its flight. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free. Praise be to God, praise be, bless our great Zambia, Zambia, Zambia. Remain we stand under the flag of our land. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free.
Prayer. Almighty God, who in your infinite wisdom and providential goodness has appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to consider with your abundant favor us your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to the performance of such important responsibilities in this land. Let your blessings descend upon us here in Parliament assembled, and grant that we may, as in your presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you've committed to our charge. Amen. Order. Notice of motion, Her Honor the Vice President.
Madam Speaker, by leave of the House, I seek to defer the motion.
Order. The question is that consideration of the motion to be deferred to a later date. Any objection? I see none. Motion deferred to a later date. We make progress. I see no matters of urgent public importance. Question for oral answer understanding order number 76. The Honorable Member for Rubasenshi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity given to the people of Rubansenshi to ask a question 158.
The Acting Minister of Local Government and Rural Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member of Parliament for Rubansenshi asks the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development questions in three parts. Part A, whether the government is aware that the Ward Development Committee members in Rubansenshi and other constituencies are charging applicants of the Constituency Development Fund to process their applications. In B, what urgent measures are being taken to ensure the committee's adherence to the CDF guidelines? And in C, whether the measures at B were implemented. Madam Speaker, the response to the question is as follows. In A, government is not aware as no such report has reached the ministry. In B, retraining and reorientation of all stakeholders on the adherence and CDF guidelines is scheduled to be undertaken. And in C, as stated above, the retraining and reorientation is scheduled to be undertaken for January 2024. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Supplementary questions. The Honorable Member for Rubasenshi.
Madam Speaker, I'm a Member of Parliament for Rubansenshi constituency who was voted by the people of Rubansenshi constituency under Ruwingu district. Madam Speaker, what is obtained on the ground is that these WDCs, allow me to shed more light, are tasked under Act number 11 of 2018 to engage the zones at community level and distribute the application forms for all the 4 categories so that the government can able to empower the Zambian people in that constituency, and at the same time to also make sure that the community participate in the projects that they want in that particular community. And these WDCs, they have been working, and they are saying we are covering long distances to distribute these application forms, and at the same time to take to the Luwingu Town Council. Some they are even covering 160 kilometers if you talk of Munungwa, Nyemba, and other places. Now, when these WDCs say we are failing to take these application forms and we cannot continue working for free, they are forced now to ask the applicants to say, pay something. And the minister said the government is not aware. My question is, what measures that the government going to put in place to ensure that these WDCs who are covering long distances to take these application forms to Luwingu Town Council, and at the same time, for the time that they are putting in place to ensure that everything go according to the expectation of the Zambian government. I would like the minister to assure the people of Rubansesh, in particular the WDCs. I thank you.
The Acting Minister of Local Government and Rural Development.
Madam Speaker, the question he asked is whether we're aware that the people are asking for compensation. Now he has asked what measures we are going to take to compensate the people who are traveling a long distance. He needs to file in a different question. I thank you.
The Honorable Member for Rubanseshi.
Madam Speaker, the question is, what measures that the government is putting in place to ensure that these WDCs are supported logistically and ensuring that the works are done according to the expectation of the Zambian government? So if the minister say the question that I'm asking and which is on the order paper is different from this, then I'm worried. So the other question maybe I would have to ask the minister, since the government is aware that the WDCs in Rubanseshi constituency and the other constituencies across the country, they are facing the same challenges in terms of distributing these application forms and at the same time to return to the various councils. What is the motivation? What is it that the government is appreciating these people for the sacrifice and the time that they are putting in? I submit, Madam Speaker.
The Acting Minister of Local Government and Rural Development.
Madam Speaker, certainly I appreciate the work that the WCs are doing in collecting the information from the applicants. The first part of the question was whether we were aware that they are asking for support, and we answered correctly that we are not aware. As to whether government will develop a compensation mechanism to facilitate the collection of that information, I'm not able to give you an answer now. I submit.
Is the Honorable Member for Rubanseshi satisfied with the feedback?
Madam Speaker, I'm not the monopoly of wisdom. However, I've seen other members of parliament want to contribute. You may give me an opportunity later on. Thank you.
The Honorable Member for Ron.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Acting Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, the events happening in Rubanseshi is actually peculiar to all the constituencies, and the reason is very simple, Honorable Minister. The WDCs are tasked to collect information on both projects, grants and loans, and then transmit them to the constituents office or indeed the local authorities. Honorable Minister, in the process, these WDCs are incapacitated in the sense that they do not have sometimes even transport money to ferry this information to the respective local authorities. And as such, sometimes the applicants themselves are forced to volunteer and give some of these WDCs probably maybe transport or money to do photocopying. And in the turn, people start saying that they are charging. It is now clear that government is aware that there is a challenge here, Honorable Minister. What is your ministry doing to ensure that you cushion these turbulences that the WDCs are passing through and remove the negative vice that they are actually asking for money from the from the community? What is your local government going to do from the 5% probably to supplement their efforts? Indeed, they are a very, very major component into the whole process of CDF. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Acting Minister of Local Government and Rural Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that challenge is quite clear, and government will take it in and be able to provide a position at a later date. I submit.
The Honorable Member for Kaumbwe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to echo the same sentiments that this situation is peculiar to all our constituencies. In fact, there was even a motion last time to consider giving some motivation to WDCs, which was shot down, that these are voluntary, or they are on voluntary basis. Now, just to follow the answer that the minister gave, that the government is going to give training in January. My question is it not possible that right now that there should be an urgent action towards motivating these WDCs, because we are all in the midst of preparing 2024 budgets for our CDF. We are all in the midst of preparing 2024 budgets, and we are required to submit the projects before end of December. So in order to facilitate the smooth running, smooth operation of this process, what immediate action can be done within before submission of our 2024 budget? I thank you.
The Acting Minister of Local Government and Rural Development.
Madam Speaker, we have already stated that we'll consult and be able to give a position. That is as much as we can say for now. I submit.
The Honorable Member for Lubansenshi, were you given 2 allocations? The Honorable Member for Chama North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, needless to say that the WDCs indeed play a very critical role in the decentralization agenda. Honorable Minister, we have got a councillor in a ward, then we have a WDC chairperson in a ward. At least a councillor is somehow empowered. Don't you think that in future, maybe to avoid the friction between the WDC chairperson and the council, don't you think that you should harmonize these particular positions so that maybe the councillor can, since he is somehow empowered, could be able to take that role of the WDC chairperson? Thank you.
The Acting Minister of Local Government and Rural Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for that question. Simply put, Madam Speaker, and in simpler English, we have said we are going to consult. I submit.
We make progress. Next question. Question for oral answer understanding order number 74. The Honorable Member for Chembe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving the people of Chembe to ask a question. Question number 159.
The Acting Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honorable Member for Chembe asks the Minister of Health, A, whether government has any plans to construct mortuaries at the following health centers in Chembe District. 1, Kundamfumu. 2, Lukola. 3, Chembe. 4, Kasoma Malwela. And 5, Lukola. B, if so, when the plans will be implemented, and C, if there are no such plans, why? The response, Madam Speaker. A, the health services in Zambia are delivered in a service delivery system that aims at providing health services as close to the facility as possible. To achieve this, the services delivery system is designed with the following structures. 1, health posts. 2, health centers. 3, first-level hospitals at district level. 4, second-level hospitals as general hospitals. 5, third-level hospitals as teaching hospitals. And 6, fourth-level hospitals, which are specialized institutions. The House may wish to note that at each level of care mentioned above, I'll read that again, Madam Speaker. The House may wish to note that each level of care mentioned above has a specific establishment. A health center does not have a medical doctor within its establishment. Hence, the government has no plans to construct mortuaries at the following health centers. 1, Kundamfumu. 2, Lukola. 3, Chembe. 4, Kasoma Mawelwa. And 5, Lukola. B, Madam Speaker, as stated earlier, government has no immediate plans to construct mortuaries at the above-mentioned rural health centers on account that they do not have medical doctors. Therefore, there is no one to certify bodies as being dead. Therefore, Part B of the question falls away. C, Madam Speaker, the House may wish to note that, as above mentioned, dead bodies are supposed to be certified by a medical doctor only. A health center does not have a doctor within its establishment, and so you cannot have a mortuary at a health center facility. Therefore, government has no plans to construct any at the mentioned centers. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. Supplementary questions? The Honorable Member for Chembe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is, in such clinics in question, when people die, they are taken to the community. And when they are taken back to the communities, I want to know what immediate measure have the ministry put in place to those who dies with contagious diseases. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Anyway, I don't know whether the minister's got the answer. The Acting Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, the honorable member has substantially changed the question, asking about contagious diseases, when the question was about whether there is plan to construct facilities. I think it's not fair that the question changes so radically. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Notice of motion, the Honorable Member for Kanchivia.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that in order to minimize dependence on maize as a staple food, this House urges government to formulate an agricultural policy to promote the production of other affordable staple foods.
Is the motion seconded?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Seconded by the Honorable Member for Chama North. The question is that in order to minimize the dependence on maize as the main staple food, this House urges the government to formulate an agricultural policy to promote the production of other affordable staple foods. Any debate? The Honorable Member for Kanchivia.
Madam Speaker, I wish to thank you for this opportunity granted to us to move this very important and non-controversial motion. Madam Speaker, the continued reliance on maize production affects Zambia's dietary quality. It also poses a risk on the country's food security in times of drought. Madam Speaker, the lack of alternative and affordable food is bad for diets, resulting in hunger, child stunting. It's bad for agriculture, resulting in lack of resilience in food systems. The heavy dependency on maize worsens Zambia's malnutrition burden. As statistics show, 40% of children under the age of 5 are stunted because of limited diversity of food production and consumption. According to the 2023 Global Hunger Index, Madam Speaker, Zambia is ranked 110 out of 125 countries. There's a decline from 2022 Global Hunger Index, where Zambia ranked 108 out of 121 countries. Both rankings place Zambia in the category of countries that have serious levels of hunger, together with Republic of Congo, Sudan, Afghanistan, Haiti, Sierra Leone, to mention but a few. It is important to note from the onset, Madam Speaker, that there is no specific agricultural policy that comprehensively seeks to diversify away from maize. The government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, has put in various policy documents. However, the policies are fragmented. For example, most policies on agriculture are maize-centric, which have continued to undermine Zambia's potential to diversify this sector, thereby inhibiting inclusive growth. For example, FISIP under the FRA, these continue to place maize production and maize marketing at center stage. There is therefore need to develop a dedicated agricultural policy to promote the production of other affordable and staple foods to improve diversity in both food production and consumption, as well as bring down prices of food commodities. The government will be promoting the production of drought-resistant crops such as millet, sorghum, cassava, groundnuts, etc., if we were to pursue this route. Madam Speaker, I wish to also mention that it is critical to note and to recognize that the country's national budget, which is over 12% of the national budget, is allocated to the Ministry of Agriculture, which is a positive allocation. However, the worrisome trend is that close to 90% of this allocation is spent on two programs at the ministry, FISIP and FRA. This expenditure pattern suffocates any meaningful investment in any other sectors within the ministry, especially agribusiness development, agricultural infrastructure development, and effective agricultural extension services. There is need to reverse these resources allocation and management towards and to ensure we go towards trends that ensure that there are more meaningful investments within the agricultural sector. In this note, it is critical to note and recognize the positive developments that have been put in place by the ministry and government through the Comprehensive Agricultural Transformation Program, CASP. This program has identified critical investment areas that require both policy instruments to support their implementation, among others. Among the other investment areas that are critical is the current farm blocks development initiatives. This is a positive development in the right direction. However, the key questions still remain unanswered. Number one, with the current resource allocation, Madam Speaker, and expenditure patterns in the Ministry of Agriculture, how can the government realistically finance these investments? Number two, what measures are put in place that CASP does not remain a document on the shelves, but it's actually implemented? Number three, How are we mainstreaming lessons from previous efforts to establish farming blocks so that our efforts do not repeat environmental and natural resource degradation that other countries have experienced at the expense of agriculture? Among some of the recommendations within this scope, Madam Speaker, is that government must complement the current efforts with the following practical steps. Number one, there's every need to formulate a clear and practical public-private sector partnerships in critical areas that will drive and accelerate growth of critical value chains. Immediate focus should be A, a PPP in agriculture mechanization development and a PPP in agribusiness development that will catalyze meaningful investments by both the government and the private sector. Number two, maximize utilization of the country's multilateral commitments, such as membership to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, to draw appropriate technical expertise in formulation of appropriate frameworks, strategies, and investment plans in the agriculture sector. This can be achieved, Madam Speaker, through unilateral trust funds, as opposed to relying on cooperating partners funding alone. Madam Speaker, there's a quest for technology transfer for the agriculture sector.
Order, honorable members, the voices are becoming louder and louder, almost overtaking the honorable member on the floor. Can we just please try to lower? Let's lower our voices.
It's a non-farmers, Madam Speaker.
You may continue.
I'm trying to speak over the non-farmers. Madam Speaker, I'll lower my voice. By 2030, according to the Vision 2030, Madam Speaker, Zambians aspire to live in a strong and dynamic middle-income industrialized nation that provides opportunities for all. The Vision 2030, Madam Speaker, speaks to our quest to become industrialized, and this is about 6 years from now, where we must transform among the key sectors, the agricultural sector, by not only attracting investors to our farming blocks, but also giving our 3.5 million farmers across the country new technologies with the potential to transform production. Madam Speaker, technology transfer is needed immediately, and evidence from countries like Nigeria demonstrates that technology plus strong government backing can yield positive results. Technologies to achieve Zambia's green revolution exist, but mostly just sitting on the shelves. The challenge, therefore, is the lack of supportive policies to ensure that they are scaled up to reach the millions of our farmers across the country. As I've alluded to, a case in point is agriculture under the country's Ministry of Agriculture, which has resulted in rice production revolution over a period of 3 years. Madam Speaker, allow me to underscore that the need for us to bring the academia on board becomes important for them to adapt their curriculum to enable technology-driven farmers and to focus on agribusiness entrepreneurship for young people, emphasizing the need to rise beyond theories to application. Madam Speaker, allow me to also state that in this regard, there's also need to consider investment in rural infrastructure. For us to significantly improve the output and accelerate agricultural development, generous investment in rural infrastructure is essential and should feature high on the list of our priorities. To be sure, infrastructure projects require huge capital outlays, but they also involve long maturity periods and oftentimes low rates of return. However, rural infrastructure is a strong determinant in the ability of our farmers to access institutional finance and markets. Given that most of the agricultural activities take place in rural areas, rural infrastructure can transform subsistence agriculture in many parts of Zambia into modern commercial farming systems. Madam Speaker, rural agriculture infrastructure includes, and I quote, physical infrastructure, which is road connectivity, storage, processing and preservation facilities, resource-based infrastructures, irrigation and public access to water, farm power and energy and rural electrification, input-based infrastructure, which speaks to improved seeds, fertilizer, farm and machinery, and institutional infrastructure, which speaks to extension and education technologies to improve rural literacy and agricultural research, among others. Madam Speaker, this being a non-controversial motion, allow me, as I conclude, that I wish to urge all honorable members to support this non-controversial motion for the benefit of the people we represent. Madam Speaker, I submit.
Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak now or later?
Later, Madam Speaker.
The honorable member for Chama North. Oh, later. You said later?
I said later, Madam Speaker.
Okay. There's an indication for a point of order. What is your point of order, the honorable member for Lugasenshi?
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving the people of Rwansenshi to raise a point of order. And sorry, been to Honorable Sunday, who is on the floor. Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, Madam Speaker, our standing order 65 are very clear. This country, before the move of this motion, before he was born, you found maize being cultivated or farmed here in Zambia, and even now, the Zambian people and beyond our country, they want this step food to continue. And that's the more reason the New Dawn government has even allocated 4.8 billion kwacha towards FISIPU so that we can able to grow maize, taking advantage of our natural resources, water, land, and everything. Now, is the honorable member of parliament who was on the floor in order to mislead himself, to mislead this house, to mislead the nation that we should look for other alternatives apart from depending on maize, which the Zambian people and beyond need, and this has proved that it is really a staple food here in this republic. I seek your serious role, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
The honorable member for Lugasenshi, you've debated your point of order. However, be advised that this is a private member's motion which has been brought to the House. And your duty, honorable member for Lugasenshi, was just to debate whether you are supporting the motion or you are not. So actually, the honorable member of Lugasenshi, you are out of order. You are supposed to support or not to support. Any further debate? The honorable member for Zambezi East.
Madam Speaker, I sincerely thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the private member's motion, which has been ably moved by the honorable member for Kanchivia, my good friend. Whilst he's my good friend, on the floor of the House, I would like to oppose him in as far as the motion is concerned. I wish to state it from the outset that I do not support the motion which he has moved for obvious reasons, and I will explain them in my discourse. Madam Speaker, a lot of literature exists regarding agriculture. For those of you who may take interest in issues to do with our agriculture in the country, please look for literature from IAPRI, an institution which is engaged in research in as far as agriculture is concerned. And the little literature I've read, of course, suggests that what we are lacking is really to take agriculture as a business and not just view it for production of food, but to produce food and also produce more so that it can be a business and it can bring you income in the homes, which can help you to take children to school, which can improve your livelihood, including exporting. If we produced more of the maize, for instance, it will give us foreign exchange and stabilize the dollar. So at the moment, we are not producing enough of the maize after all, with the yearning market just around us. Here in Congo here, the president was on record, came to announce here about the market that is yawning in Congo, which he has already actually secured. And many other countries are looking for this maize. Therefore, we already have policies in place, which I'm sure the Minister of Agriculture will speak to in detail to ensure food security. However, there has been deliberate policies to encourage production of other crops. You've seen the FISIF package is also attempting to do just that, so that we can encourage other crops so that we reduce on the dependency of maize. However, if the maize that we produce is not even enough, how then can we discourage it? So we should, of course, bring in deliberate policies as you have already heard, to encourage other crops. You heard the other day we were debating an issue of introduction of legumes and many others. You've heard of soybeans, sunflower, and many others, including tubers, which have been encouraged by the Ministry of Agriculture. So there is policies already in that direction. So to request government to come up with a specific policy according to the drafters of that motion to specifically stop the dependency on maize and probably encourage other crops through a policy specific to maize would be, of course, asking for too much from government. What we should be asking government to do is to scale up the introduction of other crops that are useful, which can also give us income and which could be used as staple food, as substitute foods. They are substitute. I'm calling them substitutes because maize is naturally a staple food. Where I come from, it's not just maize, even cassava. In our days, we grew up eating cassava and shima as lundas. The maize was just something that we had to add to the cassava. Up to now, in Zambezi, we eat what we call nshima ya kafuchu, meaning a mixture of maize meal and cassava meal to produce a very nice delicacy. I've seen, we even eat the same at the National Assembly motel here. And I'm always asking for that food. So meaning, cassava is also a staple food. So we do have some other crops which are staple foods. We should just encourage them. You heard the other day, I think we're debating a question for a disease that has broken out, I think, in Lopula. Our colleagues in Lopula are lundas like me, most of them. So their staple food is also cassava. So we need to come up with maybe ways of protecting these, which are already staple foods, but they are substitutes to maize. Maize being the main staple food, we should encourage it to be grown everywhere and probably scale it up now to a commercial level so that we'll produce enough for our own consumption, including for the export, as you have heard, for that market which is yawning in the DRC and many other countries in the sub-region. Even in East Africa, they want maize. If you want to know how much demand is there for the maize, ask the Minister of Agriculture and probably the FRA how much people apply to buy the maize in order for them to export it. And that's the reason to why at some point, members of the opposition were the ones actually complaining that our maize should not be exported because it was going to put pressure on the price of our mealie meal. And if we are even fearing to put pressure on the price of our mealie meal, it means we don't have enough. Therefore, coming up with a policy in the way the mover of the motion has coined it would be inappropriate at this stage. And I believe that with these few words, we've picked the points to try and see how we can encourage production of more maize. I am already seeing, actually, this year, that there will be a lot of maize that will be produced. I'm seeing the response from the people in the constituencies. They have really cultivated. Why? Because it looks like the floor price, or the price that has been given, is actually attractive. The increase in the price of maize, the value of maize, which has gone up, is encouraging farmers to grow more maize so that it becomes profitable. And I think that's the direction to which we should be going. Otherwise, of course, I would like to apologize to the mover of the motion that I should oppose this motion in this way, but of course, taking note of those points that have moved forward, which gives us an encouragement to grow more maize so that we can export more. And that is the vision of the President of the Republic of Zambia, which is accepted by us, your members on the right-hand side. Madam Speaker, I thought with these few words I could provide some meat to the debate on the floor of the House. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Chama South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Clearly, the previous speaker, from the tone of his debate and everything, Madam Speaker, agreed to the motion. So yes. For me,
Honorable Member, I think whatever the Honorable Member was debating, those are his views. Just concentrate on your debate. You may go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, let me state that I support this motion. It's a timely motion, and I have the following reasons why, as a nation, we should consider diversifying our staple food. First, we have to understand that maize was introduced on the continent around 1933. We were not maize dependent. I want to question the conscience of almost everyone. Go and do a research from your forefathers, even the people that God has given the privilege to live probably for more than 60 years. They will tell you that they never depended on maize. And not only that, we've also lost it as a nation. Look at the foundation of our food. We have allowed it to be commercialized. The seed, we are no longer preserving ourselves. These are facts. Those of us who have seen days, probably more than Her Honor the Vice President, understand that in olden days in Kaputa, people never depended on Koteva or Sinjeta. Never. They preserved the maize using traditional methods. But what have we done? We have commercialized our own life. Food is life. We are now making noise as a nation that we are eating genetically modified food, which is imported. Of course, there is no proof to that effect. But what guarantee do we have that these multinationals that we've given power to breed our maize are not using scientific methods that modify the genetic characteristics of our staple food? Therefore, it is timely, colleagues, that we should go back to our roots. Probably if we do that, the prevalent rates of diseases such as cancer in the long term will be addressed. Not only that, if you look at maize production, it's quite expensive. And yet certain regions are capable of producing food which our people can depend on for a long time. I'll give an example of Chama, Honorable Mtachalo and I can attest that in Chama, we never depended on maize. Our staple food there was millet and sorghum. Even the source of sorghum and millet, the quality that we are using, is gone. Simply because we did not protect the seed for this food. Honorable Speaker, for me, I'm submitting that can we probably zone our country. Let the regions that are able to produce maize continue producing. Then more importantly, let us allow other regions that are able to produce cassava, are able to produce millet, are able to produce sorghum, be able to do so. Then we are going to even solve the hunger problem that this country experiences. In conclusion, food technology. Honorable Speaker, you can agree with me that Nshima is the most tasteless food. It's a fact. If I'm to ask the Minister of Home Affairs, what is the taste of Nshima?
Unfortunately, you
he will
cannot
not
ask
tell.
him, the honorable member. You are debating and not asking questions. Are you done?
Not yet. I was trying to explain to say, as a nation, we should also try to invest in food technology. Those of you colleagues who have traveled, the way you eat vegetables here, or the way you prepare it, is not the way other countries prepare the same vegetable. You will not realize that you are eating, for example, cabbage, because of the manner in which they invest in the technology and preparation of food. This traditional food that we try to despise, can we find funding to ensure that we invest in the way that our nutritionist technologies can try to improve it in terms of its preparation, in terms of making it a bit attractive, as opposed to always depending on Nshima. In Chama, we produce rice, but go in many homes, you will not find them eating rice. We treat it as a cash crop. No wonder this motion is actually urging the government to ensure that we try to train our people, that we should not only rely on maize. Even the cassava that you've been eating, you people from Luapula Northern Province from time immemorial, mixing with millet, continue, it is most nutritious than the maize, which is probably responsible for most of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes. So for me, Honorable Speaker, I'm in support of this motion. Those who mean well and want to reduce the dependence on maize, therefore reducing the cost of production of this maize, should be able to support this motion because it's urging the diversification of our food options. And we've done this from time immemorial. It's a matter of government to actually encourage, go back and explain the food value of us eating cassava, millet, sorghum, and many other options that are available. And I wish, and it's my actually prayer that everyone will support this motion. I submit, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. The honorable members where Honorable Katambo is, if you want to caucus, please, I think you can use the corridors because your voices are too loud. And the honorable was almost like sleeping, lying on the bench. Yes, we want to make progress. The honorable member for Kalabo Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would want to just to add one or two words or comments relating to the motion. Like Honorable Gambita was saying, Honorable Chanda is my friend. And I really rely on him in many aspects. But it happens once in a while. It does happen. It's human. Madam Speaker, I'll read the motion. That in order formulate an agricultural policy to minimize the dependence on maize. That in order to minimize the dependence on maize as the main staple food, this House urges the government to formulate an agricultural policy to promote the production of other affordable staple food. Madam Speaker, I find a mix-up there. It's using staple, is also applying affordable. These two, for me, they are not on the same line. The question over this motion, affordable, in what sense? Purchase, production, what is it that should be so that it's affordable? However, to shorten my debate, on several occasions I've heard from the Minister of Agriculture, either talking about e-voucher or direct input support to the farmers. Now, under direct input, I remember also visiting the office of the PS for Agriculture, Mr. Greeny Mbos, where I lodged a complaint that the government wants the people in Karav to grow maize, but us to grow rice, but us, the southern part of Karaw, was not interested in that. But what they grow is sorghum. The central part of Karaw, they grow millet and cassava. The western part of Karaw, where the Skongo constituency, Karaw, Skongo district, there's rice production there. You go in the Lua, there's rice production vis-a-vis other crops like maize. So, this motion, sir, Madam Speaker, for me, I don't know whether I'll be right or wrong to say, I think the door is open. The government has already opened the door. Even yesterday, if I can recall, the minister hinted on the same, that the loans, you can use these loans. He didn't say on one. So, my colleague, I think you are you are within the realms of government. The government already has this policy of diversifying because of the credit window and the FISIP. To me, it shows that the government is in that trajectory which the motion wants to perceive. Now, I want also to comment on this maize, which he feels should be reduced. Like Honorable Kambita was saying, surely we run away from maize. You are running away from the dollar. You see that, eh? You are running away from the dollar. We want the US dollar. I'm sure there's this relationship of maize and US dollar. We are not saying the dollar should only come from the copper. We are not saying the dollar should not come. You see, We are also using maize here. The government wants to use maize to bring in the US dollar, which the Zambians want. Now, if we say we do away with maize, look now, what are you doing with this US dollar? It means now, this great need of Zambians. Zambians, Madam Speaker, want to buy vehicles. And you can't buy vehicles without a US dollar. Zambians want these fancy things. You can't have these fancy things without the US dollar. Now, the question, Madam Speaker, is how do you get the US dollar? Without selling maize. You see, copper production, for you who deal with copper, you know the production of copper has not increased so much. Meaning, the income of US dollar is also compromised. Now, sir and madam, for me, the government is in the right direction. The 10 million metric tons will result in several US dollars into this country. So we should promote the growth of more maize, because this maize is not only for Zambians. You go to Congo, they want maize. You go to Kenya, they want maize. You go to Malawi, they want maize. You go to Tanzania, they want maize. You go to Angola, they want maize. They go to Zimbabwe, they want maize. Hey, Madam Speaker, this maize is not only for Zambians. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Chinsali.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in debating this motion, I would like to look at the elements of the motion. I think this motion has two things. Number one, it is talking about diversification. Number two, it is talking about reducing the dependence on maize. Now, from the onset, I would like to say I support one side of the motion, one element of the motion, which is diversification. On the other side, I disagree and I do not support this motion on the element of reducing the dependence on maize. And my reason is very simple, Madam Speaker. Reducing the dependence on maize. The Honorable for Chama South was debating, talked about when we started farming maize in 1930, he said 1933. Actually, the actual information is that maize seeds, the varieties of maize seeds were developed in 1913 in Chilanga district. That is by the Ministry of, by the Department of Agriculture. That was done by our colonial masters, Madam Speaker. What does that mean? It means that we have been farming maize for 110 years, Madam Speaker, which is over a century. So now, during this process, or during this number of years, Madam Speaker, we now have experience of 110 years in farming maize. Honestly, can we just come today and discard all this experience that we have gained over a period of 110 years? My answer and my point is that no, we cannot do this. What we need to do is to encourage the government to diversify agriculture, which I think the government is already doing. What we need to encourage the government is to do more, Madam Speaker. Maize, Madam Speaker, like my honorable colleagues have stated, they have said, which the matter that I agree with is that maize growing maize is a business, and if we take it on a higher level, or we take it to a higher level, Madam Speaker, it can help to improve the income that our people, Zambian people, can earn. And if we are to export it, like again what my honorable colleagues said, Honorable Member for Kalabo and Zambezi East, it's a source of forex. So if we can urge the government to encourage more, if we encourage government to ensure that maize is grown on a larger scale, we can end for forex, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in Burundi, coffee, the government does not allow the private sector to export coffee, Madam Speaker. Exportation of coffee is just a preserve of the government of Burundi, Madam Speaker. Why? Because that's what they use to earn forex. That's what they use to earn forex. Yeah, or the dollar. That's what they use. Now for us, we have an opportunity that we can use for business and to earn foreign exchange, foreign currency, and we are saying that we should discard it. So my point is that I do not agree with this motion, purely on the basis that there is no need to reduce the dependence on maize, because introducing a policy that will entail that the people of Zambia should reduce the dependence on maize basically means that we should introduce a policy that will discourage people from farming or growing maize, Madam Speaker. What we need to do, Madam Speaker, is to encourage the government. For example, they have started this agricultural credit window. We need to encourage and advise the government that they need to take it to an upper scale, so that when people can have access to money that can help them to purchase farming inputs and finance the labor for agriculture, then we can have more production of maize and other products, other crops, Madam Speaker. The other thing that we need to do, Madam Speaker, is to encourage the government that it should finance more. It should finance more research, so that there can be a possibility of finding new maize varieties which can be easier to grow, which can even be more nutritious, Madam Speaker. That way, I think it is better than introducing a policy that will reduce the production of maize or dependence of maize. If we look at my honorable colleague, who is also my cousin, the member for Chama South, Madam Speaker, though he was saying that we need to reduce the dependence on maize, Madam Speaker, I was with him at lunch and he was eating in Shima. He didn't even leave anything on the plate. He finished everything that he was given, Madam Speaker. But he's advising that no, people should not be eating too much in Shima. Eh? So, in speaking, he may be agreeing with the motion, but in practice, he is disagreeing with the motion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with these few remarks, I end here. I thank you.
Does the point of order still stand? What is your point of order?
Thank you. Madam Speaker, this parliament, people are watching. No wonder we have our standing order 65, which compels everyone to be factual. Is the honorable member for Chinsali, in order to misinform this House and the nation at large, that I was enjoying Nshima made of maize, when the facts are that I ordered Nshima made of cassava meal. And I really enjoyed it because it is made of cassava meal. And the facts are there. Is he in order when we are urging our people, particularly himself, to tell the people of Chinsali to continue enjoying cassava delicacies as opposed to them depending on Nshima? Is he in order? I seek your serious ruling, Madam Speaker.
The honorable member for Chama South, you don't have even evidence to prove that you ate Nshima with cassava. I'm sure that was on a lighter note. The honorable member for Chama South. Chama North, are you ready to?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First and foremost, I want to take this opportunity to salute Honorable Chanda for coming up with this very, very progressive motion. This motion, Madam Speaker, is not saying that we discard maize production in this country. This motion is trying to encourage the government to come up with policies which are going to promote the growing of other crops which can contribute to gross domestic product to grow the agriculture sector. Indeed, the people of Zambia, we have depended on maize for all these years, but I think the world is becoming dynamic. So this motion is not aimed at discarding maize production. No, it is saying minimizing dependence as a staple food, meaning that you can continue to grow maize, maybe even for export, for livestock. But meanwhile, you have got other crops like sorghum, cassava, which can be considered as a staple food. That is going to reduce pressure on the government, because every time the government is under pressure because of the issue of maize. So for me, I think this is a very progressive motion which I expected the new Dawn government actually to embrace. Just to agree with my colleague Honorable Mungandu from Chama South. Yes, in Chama, we were not depending on maize. We depended, I remember my grandmother used to grow rice, sorghum, millet, you see. So if you look at these crops, these are drought-resistant crops. Because of this climate change we are having today, maize needs a lot of water. You see, so we are saying that we have got a challenge in the world because of the global warming. So we are saying that let's encourage our people to start growing cassava, sorghum, millet. By the way, I'm a member of the Agriculture Committee. Cassava is bringing a lot of money. You see, we are failing to meet the demand because of is that ethanol. So you see, once we encourage our people that these other crops have got money, today if you go at the market to buy millet, a tin of millet, it's very, very expensive. That way we'll be increasing household income among our people in rural areas and uplifting many, many out of poverty. Today, if you go and check the statistics in terms of importation of rice, we are importing rice billions and billions of dollars every year. By importing rice, we are importing unemployment in this country. So why don't we say we minimize importation of rice and these other crops, encourage people to grow rice, meanwhile continue to grow more maize. That way, I believe that one, the dollars which will be going out, we are going to minimize. We are going to have a stable exchange rate. So really, I feel that the agriculture sector, if we can take radical measures, it can contribute even 40% of the gross domestic product. Because currently, the agriculture sector is contributing only about 20% of GDP. You see, so to me, I feel that if you look at other countries, you find that other countries, 50%, for example, Benin, just cotton alone, Benin cotton industry accounts for 40% of GDP in Benin. So that's why we are saying let's promote some of these crops which are going to uplift our people out of poverty. Maize growing is very expensive. It's very expensive. If you look at the budget for FISIP, it's too much. Yesterday I was complaining that if you look at the budget for Ministry of Agriculture, FISIP and the FRA, beating the Ministry of Infrastructure, are we serious as a nation? I don't think so. So we are not saying that we are going to discard the maize. And I'm one of the persons who moved the private members' motion here to urge this government to transform the food reserve agency, that apart from the FRA just buying maize for strategic reserve, the FRA can also be used as a vehicle to export maize on behalf of a small-scale farmer in Kaputa, in Chama who has no capacity to export on condition that the food national security has been met. So really, I do not think that this motion is controversial. Let's not politicize to think that if we support it, maybe the people of Zambia will turn against us. No, I think as leaders, let's make decisions which are going to better our people. Today, people may not appreciate, but believe me, some few years from now, people appreciate that really, I think the government did well to promote the growing of these other crops. Because maize, 70% of our budget, 70% goes to promoting maize production in the country at the expense of cash crops, cotton, and these others, which are cash crops, which can help this country really to move forward. So, with those a few remarks, I want to appeal to the New Dawn government that this is a window of opportunity for you to support this particular motion so that we can uplift many of our people out of poverty. If you go to Asia, the Asian tigers, I think they have uplifted many of their people out of poverty because of agriculture. But if you only focus at maize, neglecting some of these very, very important crops, we just impoverishing our own country. We have depended on mining, although mining contributed more than 70% of foreign exchange earning. But the mine does not belong to us. The mines are owned by the foreigners. How much is the mining industry contributing to GDP in this country? Below 20%. Is that a success story? So I think as a country we must now look at a broader picture and ensure that we make agriculture as the main economic driver. That is the only way we are going to move the country forward. Malawi has got no minerals. But how are they surviving? Rwanda, they have no minerals. How are these countries surviving? They're surviving on agriculture. So depending on maize, believe me, we are doing a disservice to this nation because the sorghum and these other crops, you don't even need fertilizer. So with those remarks, Madam Speaker, I want to persuade the government that please let's support this non-controversial motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. My apologies to the honorable members that had indicated to debate. We are behind time. I'll ask the Acting Minister of Agriculture to respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to provide government's response to the motion by the Honourable Member of Parliament for Kanchimia, who is urging government to formulate an agricultural policy in order to minimize the country's dependence on maize. From the onset, I wish to state that government does not support the motion because we have several policy documents that clearly highlight the need to shift concentration of production from maize to other crops to enhance not only nutrition outcomes, but also incomes and exports. Madam Speaker, allow me to elaborate on the various policy and planning frameworks that have provisions on diversifying crop production away from maize to other food and non-food crops. 1. Vision 2030. Under the Vision 2030, the agriculture sector's vision is an efficient, competitive, sustainable, and export-led agriculture sector that assures food security and increased income by 2030. Further, some of the specific sector goals include 1. Increased agricultural productivity and land use under cultivation by 2030, increased exports of agricultural and agro-processed products by 2030, increased livestock population to 6 million by 2030, and increased fish population to 300,000 metric tons by 2030. Government recognizes through the sector vision and goals that agriculture development cannot be attained if policy and production continues to concentrate on maize. 2. The 8th National Development Plan. Madam Speaker, government through the 8th National Development Plan has emphasized the need for the country to implement an agricultural diversification agenda. The plan specifically provides for promoting farm block development with special focus on diversification of crops and expansion of livestock and fisheries subsectors. The farm block concept entails the creation of specialized agricultural production and processing zones. And 3, the second national agricultural policy. Madam Speaker, The second national agricultural policy also provides a policy framework to promote sustainable agricultural diversification, agricultural commercialization, private sector participation, and inclusive agricultural growth under its 7 objectives. The policy provides for both crop diversification as well as agriculture diversification. Specifically under objective number 7, to improve food and nutrition security, the policy intends to promote diversification of agricultural